When we look at the writings about Jesus in the New Testament, we find that Jesus often had compassion on those around him. But what is compassion? We use the word compassion to mean that you have a deep care and concern for the suffering and pain of others, and that feeling pushes you to do something about it. A good illustration would be when a mother sees her son fall and skin his knee. She's concerned about his pain, and she helps by comforting him and washing his scrape and putting on a bandage. The original word in the biblical text literally means to be moved deep in your stomach. So why would the English word compassion be translated from a word that means to be moved deep in your stomach? That seems odd. What does care and concern for others have to do with your stomach? Well, have you ever seen someone in pain and you didn't even have words to describe your feeling? It was almost like your stomach twisted a little. Maybe you've seen videos where people are hurting or they're hungry. It's almost as if you can feel the pain with them. In English, we have a similar way to describe compassion. Often we'll say, "My heart just broke for that child," or "My heart went out to him when he fell." Why would we say our heart went out? That sounds worse than a deep movement in our stomach. Well, you see, both languages are trying to describe a feeling deep within us that's really difficult to put into words. It's the feeling you get when you see pain and suffering and you know you need to do something about it. Jesus, as we read about his life, was the most compassionate person to ever live. Let's look at some of the times during his life when he had compassion on others. In Matthew 14, verses 13 through 21, we find the famous story of Jesus feeding the 5,000. Verse 14 says, "And when Jesus went out, he saw a great multitude, and he was moved with compassion for them." Jesus saw these people, and his heart went out to them. What did his compassion lead him to do? Well, he healed their sick, and he fed them. What is the longest you've ever gone without eating? Maybe you went through a surgery and you couldn't eat for a day, maybe two. It's a terrible feeling. Your stomach just seems to be screaming at you. And Jesus knew all about hunger. You remember that when he began his ministry after his baptism, he fasted and didn't have anything to eat for 40 days. He knew exactly how these people felt, and he wanted to help them and show them the love of God. Have you ever seen a picture of a child who is starving? If you have, maybe you remember seeing the poor little child's very thin arms and legs. Maybe you remember being able to count all of the child's ribs that are barely covered by skin. Most of us who see a picture like that feel concerned for that child's suffering, but compassion means not only feeling concerned, but also trying to do something to help if we can. When Jesus saw such suffering, he took action to help those on whom he had compassion. Sadly, we know that we often fall short when it comes to having compassion on others, but Jesus never did. Jesus' compassion is one aspect of his personality that makes him the only perfect person to have ever lived. In Luke 13, we read a story that contrasts Jesus' compassion with that of a hard-hearted man who didn't have this kind of feeling. In this story, Jesus was in a synagogue on the Sabbath. A woman came in who had a very crooked back and she was bent over. She hadn't been able to raise herself for 18 years. Jesus saw her and he wanted to help, so he healed her. And the ruler of the synagogue was angry at Jesus because he had healed her on the Sabbath. You see, this man was just too busy trying to be in charge to stop and think about others. He never even thought about the woman. His heart didn't go out to her. He was not moved deeply within himself. He was so self-centered that he didn't even think about this woman's troubles. But Jesus always thought about others. Jesus said to the man and the crowd, "Ought not this woman, being a daughter of Abraham, whom Satan has bound, think of it, for 18 years, be loosed from this bond on the Sabbath?" When we read the story, we can't believe that that man would be so calloused that he wouldn't even think about this poor woman. But in all honesty, have you ever stopped to think about what this woman actually went through? She'd been bent over for 18 years. She couldn't raise herself up at all, the text says. Have you thought about what she saw all day? Being bent down, staring at the ground, she would see feet, donkey manure, dirt, mud. When she wanted to talk with someone, she most likely couldn't look that person in the eye. She probably couldn't recline at a table to eat like other people. Some of us who have had injuries or back problems that may have kept us down for a few days, maybe a few weeks, possibly a few months. This woman never stood up straight for 18 years. I don't know how many times you've read that story, but have you ever really thought about what that would be like? That's the thing. Jesus always thought about what others were going through, and he still thinks about what we all are going through. His compassion is perfect and it's limitless. He knows and he cares if you're suffering from cancer, if you've lost a loved one, if you're lonely or depressed. Jesus sees you. He thinks about you. That's why he says, "Come to me, all you who labor and are heavy laden, and I'll give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and lowly in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light." Jesus sees all of us. He knows what every one of us is going through, and he always has perfect compassion on all of us.